1 John 3:22. Beloved, if our heart does not condemn us, we have confidence before God. And whatever we ask, we receive from him, because we keep his commandments and do what pleases him. According in our journey through the Westminster Larger Catechism, question, I've forgotten what it is, 147, I think. One of the duties required of the first commandment, you shall have no other gods before me, is that we are to be careful in all things to please God. And since you are a fallen son of Adam or a daughter of Eve, you are well aware of how often you desire to please yourself or your fellow man, and you are well aware of your natural lack of a desire to please God in most things. But God, being rich in mercy, has given us sundry reminders in the Scriptures, lest we be tempted to forget our duty to please God rather than man, or rather than ourselves. Galatians 1:10, Paul says, "For am I now seeking the approval of man or of God? Or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ." 1 Thessalonians 2:4, "But just as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, so we speak, not to please man, but to please God, who tests our hearts." Colossians 3:23, "Whatever you do, work heartily, as if you are doing it for the Lord and not for man." 1 Corinthians 10:31, "So whether you eat or drink, or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God." And I just realized that all of those scriptures that I found were from the Apostle Paul, which is funny because we know he had a really hard time pleasing man, and he didn't please very many men, and he was beaten with rods and shipwrecked and imprisoned and all of the above many times. And there are many more scriptures. I just didn't want to take up all of our time this morning with just the reminders. We are exhorted and reminded again and again in the Scriptures to be careful in all things to please God. We are also reminded not to please man and not to please ourselves, but to please God. So, when you make a decision, any decision, how highly does pleasing God rank on your list of priorities? When you make financial decisions, are you careful in all things to please God? Do your tithing and giving practices please God? Or would a third party looking at your ledger from this last year be able to tell easily whom you were pleasing? What about your debt status? Are you debt-free or seeking to be? Great, wonderful. But are you doing it to please God? Or Dave Ramsey? Or to add that badge of honor to your vest that you so desire? Are you in debt? Is that to please God? Or to please you with nice toys? Or to keep up with the Joneses? What about your career or your job choice? Are you being careful to please God? Or are you fearful of risk and change? Or are you chasing accolades and prestige? What about the home you live in? Is that to please God? Or for you and your vanity? And as an aside, it is very possible to be vain in a small house or an old car. This isn't just a shot at folks above a certain square footage level or income level. What about the vehicles you own? Again, do you make those decisions being careful to please God or to please man? When you discipline your children, is it to please God, or is it because you were annoyed and frustrated and just wanted to be left alone? When you consume that show or that movie or that podcast or any media, are you aiming to please God or the little g God of pop culture? Are you hospitable? Wonderful. If not, is that because you are seeking to please yourself and you just don't want to do the work? But if you are hospitable, are you doing it to please yourself through the compliments and the reputation that you will build? What about your education? Is that aimed at pleasing God or in chasing money and in praise of man? Your day-to-day life contains thousands of individual decisions, some conscious and some not, but all of them have a telos, or an end, that they are aimed at. Slow down and think through those decisions. Take stock of what you are aiming at. Who are you trying to please? Because we often please ourselves, especially, and our fellow men, so that we can feel good about ourselves, which is also just pleasing ourselves. We are reminded of the need to confess our sins regularly, and so if you are able, please kneel with us as we confess our sins privately and silently, and then we will do so corporately using the prayer found in the bulletin.